Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Madeline with Sundance Astrology, and I'm here today to talk to you about the upcoming Gemini New Moon coming in on May 30th. Before we dive into the chart, I like to introduce myself by mentioning that I practice astrology through the traditional Hellenistic lens. So I use Hellenistic techniques, I use traditional rulerships, and I use whole sign houses in my practice. I also like to briefly recap the energies that we have been moving through especially after that Scorpio lunar eclipse. I have to say I'm kind of shocked that I'm already filming this video for the next moon phase or the next new moon. I really feel like that Scorpio lunar eclipse kind of put us in a little bit of a time warp. The aftermath of that was it lingered for quite a bit for me. Always curious to hear how these things go for you, so feel free to put your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. But Scorpio lunar eclipse really it's a catalyst for change that will unfurl itself over the next 6 months. So Scorpio has the tendency to kind of pull us back into our past. It brings up shadow sides. It really kind of digs underneath the surface. And that Scorpio lunar eclipse may have made you feel kind of like, and in the aftermath or even before, that you were pulled back into a past version of yourself. Or maybe you took one step forward and then like 10 steps back, and it feels like the progress, the work that you've been doing on yourself, for a moment there, you kind of got pulled back. And Scorpio kind of brings you back into the weeds of yourself, if you will, in order to remind you why it is that you were cutting the ties to that version or those patterns. It really knows that for shadow work, you have to move through the energies in order to release anything that is toxic and no longer serving you. So, you may have felt for the week after or even week and a half that you were kind of pulled back a little bit. Since then, we have had some significant energy shifts in preparation for this Gemini new moon. We have Venus moving out of the fiery sign of Aries, the sign of her exile or detriment. Basically, when she's in Mars's sign, she has to work with the tools of Mars as opposed to the tools that she likes to work with to beautify, harmonize, purify, bring things together. So she's moving into her home sign of Taurus, the feminine earth sign. And this is a really nice energy shift to give her the tools that she needs in order to kind of pick up the scattered pieces of the Scorpio lunar eclipse potentially. So we have Venus moving into her home sign of Taurus. We have also Mars, which has moved into his home sign of Aries, the masculine fire sign. So these two personal planets are back at home, capable, working with all of the tools that they need in order to get their natural significations done. And while Mars has moved into Aries, we also have Jupiter in Aries. The moon just moved through Aries, so we have a lot of Aries energy, and we're kind of fully starting to transition out of these big Pisces energies that we have been working through for quite some time this year. So curious if you felt that kind of fiery shift into Aries. Venus moving into Taurus is really going to bring a little bit of grounding, take some of the spiciness away. So we have all of these planets, Venus and Mars, working into their home signs, which are then able to bring their natural significations to hand quite easily. So this is a really nice shift. I think this is a great energy shift as we move into this Gemini new moon, and astrology is not just about one planet. They're really telling a story. So context matters. So I like to preface with this before we dive into the chart. So let's get into that now.
All right, so let's get into it. Here we have our new moon in Gemini chart. This is coming in May 30th, Monday, early morning here where I'm at. It's 5:30 a.m. Mountain Time. Please adjust for wherever you are at, as it will change based off of your location. So we have the sun and the moon coming together at 9 degrees of Gemini. Overall, we've been moving through eclipse season, which was tainted with a lot of fixed energies. So fixed sign eclipses can be a little more challenging, as eclipses bring on, they're generally seen as catalysts for change. And when we're dealing with fixed signs, these are signs that typically don't enjoy changing. So the energies have felt particularly dense, especially as we have Saturn in Aquarius, another fixed sign, slowing down to station retrograde. So overall, this new moon in Gemini is coming in with a bit of lightness, a bit of freshness, kind of helping pull us out of these denser energies. Now, the sun and the moon at 9 degrees are not really aspecting anything. However, the ruler of this eclipse, or the ruler of this new moon, is Mercury, which is making several interesting aspects. So we have Mercury retrograde as the ruler of our Gemini new moon. So Mercury is here at 26 degrees of Taurus, slowing down. This is its stationary degree, so it is essentially at a standstill. 4 degrees away from the North Node, not close enough for me to really do too much of a delineation on that, especially because it's aspecting a couple other big planets. But basically, when a planet, as Mercury is stationing, we are dealing with really big Mercury retrograde themes. So when the planet is slowing down and it's basically at a standstill, the energy gets louder. So we are probably having some of these big Mercury retrograde themes come to the surface again. If it chilled out a little bit while it was moving backwards, this is definitely like puzzle piece energy. So it's like the intense energy of the eclipse is slowly starting to fade away, at least to the point where we are ready to think things through. The past 2 weeks since the Scorpio lunar eclipse, you may have felt a little stuck, or as I mentioned, the energies have just been kind of dense. So even though the ruler of this new moon is stationing, it is working to station direct. And this just indicates that we are starting to feel ready to think things through and really close to moving forward again. So we're kind of on this brink of moving forward with these Mercury retrograde themes. So we also have Mercury retrograde sextiling Neptune here at 25 degrees of Pisces. So they're 1 degree apart, pretty close. This does indicate that things are likely to still feel a little bit foggy. Like we're not quite feeling clear after the eclipse, but we are starting to feel at least a little bit more of like spiritual hope or faith in what we are doing. If that did kind of move away during the eclipse aftermath, hopefully this sextile to Neptune is beneficial in the sense that it just gives you a little bit more hope to move forward in what you are doing. So this does indicate that things are still a little bit cloudy probably. And then we also have a square to Saturn, which is at 25 degrees. So Saturn, what's interesting here is that we have Mercury stationing to go direct. So Mercury is at a stationary degree. It's not really moving much more. And then it is squaring, this is an aspect of tension, Saturn, which is also at its stationary degree. However, Saturn is stationing to go retrograde. So Saturn will retrograde at this 25 degrees. So we have 2 planets squaring each other and they're both stationing, Mercury to go direct, Saturn to move retrograde. So Saturn deals with time. If we add in the sextile to Neptune, we're talking about there's kind of a big emphasis on like divine timing here, trusting that everything is happening right on time. Saturn is, this is a little bit of like a halting energy, but with the sextile to Neptune, we're kind of trusting where we're at. So what I'm seeing here is that our mind, Mercury, is starting to get on board with whatever, kind of came through the cracks during these eclipses. We're starting to kind of come to terms with that. Now, Saturn is on his way to rework our structures or boundaries that we currently have set in place that maybe don't work with what we want moving forward, especially as the mind is kind of catching up with everything that we experience during eclipse season. So this is still kind of like a wait energy, or like a hold, pause. I envision Saturn like holding his hand up. Hold on. It's kind of like the puzzle pieces of the mind are almost there, and then Saturn retrograde will change or address any structures that we have in our life that no longer fit with what we are slowly working towards here. So it's almost like something slides into place in terms of our mind, which I'm getting the picture is like this is knocking something else out of place. So it's likely in terms of structures, boundaries, things like that, things that Saturn rules. Maybe it deals with your current responsibilities, how you structure those, maybe reformatting that a little bit, taking certain responsibilities away, adding new responsibilities to your plate. So there's a general reviewing of responsibilities here as we have the square from the ruler of our new moon to Saturn as he is slowing down, basically had a standstill, both of them. So there is sort of an energy here that we are still hashing things out, but it is slowly starting to get clearer. I imagine the day of this new moon, you may feel like you're about to surface out of the Scorpio lunar eclipse. Things are about to get a little bit more clear, but I wouldn't be surprised if on the day of this new moon, things are still a little bit unclear. However, this Gemini energy does bring in a curiosity, which kind of helps us move forward at least. And with Mercury stationing direct June 3rd, just 4 days later, and then we have Saturn stationing retrograde on June 4th. I think even if you are feeling during this new moon that you're still not quite there with coming to terms with what happened during the eclipse, or your mind is still kind of working to puzzle things out, that's definitely the energy I get of this new moon, is that we're kind of trying to land pieces to the puzzle. But don't be worried if you don't feel quite clear yet, as I think over the next few days, as Mercury works its way to its direct motion, I think things are going to continue to fall into place fairly quickly, maybe. So, but yeah, we are still kind of hashing things out. There could be a little bit of mental frustration here with Mercury at its standstill stationary degree. Or perhaps impatience. So Saturn deals with time. The square can indicate some sort of pressure or tension or complications surrounding time. I've seen that show up as, your plate's too full, you don't have enough time, or what I'm getting the vibe here, especially with both of these planets really slowing down at their stationary degree, is that we still need some time to work things out, which, as we have a bunch of stuff in Aries, none of it's really aspecting the moon, but we do have this clear Aries energy. I do get the feeling of we might be a little impatient here. So, but just to keep in mind, stations are loud. This is an ancient tradition. Planets that we're stationing were seen as much more prominent in a birth chart than a planet that is retrograde. So when a planet is at a standstill, that is very loud, almost like quaking energy. So that the fact that we have two of these planets stationing, one to go direct, one to move retrograde, squaring each other, is definitely an interesting aspect. It's almost like this is the final moment of our frustration before many things start to fall into place. So try to stay patient, curious, open to what may fall into place, especially over the course of this week. So lastly, we have a trine to Pluto. Pluto's at 28, so it's 2 degrees separation. Both are retrograde. Pluto is the enforcer of releasing. So a trine is beneficial. This is a beneficial aspect. It's seen as harmonious. So this may be concretizing some releasing that the Scorpio lunar eclipse brought up. So anything that came up for you during the eclipse window, or even during the aftermath, for me personally, it was a lot of the aftermath, the last 2 weeks, things coming up to the surface that kind of brought my realization to what needs to go in my life regarding patterns, things like that. This may deal with mental patterns as we're talking about Mercury. We could also be talking about patterns in the mind around values, Mercury and Taurus, or releasing certain communication styles or ways of communicating that are no longer beneficial. This is all Mercury themes. This could also lead to like maybe you're having actual conversations with the sun and the moon in Gemini, the ruler of this new moon, Mercury stationing. So you may be actually having conversations regarding things that you are releasing, or it might be more internal in terms of, you know, mental patterns, things like that, subconscious behaviors within the mind that have come to the surface that you are now ready to release. So the last 2 weeks after the eclipse, or even between the eclipses, it may have felt a little more overwhelming, like you couldn't really address the things that are coming up. So this trine to Pluto is kind of like a finishing off here, like let's release, set yourself up for success. So overall, Gemini is a really youthful, light, and curious energy. So we are dealing with some heavier planets in terms of Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, that the ruler is interacting with during this moon. So this is going to bring in a more serious tone. However, Gemini is inventive, and it brings in an energy of being ready to get creative to solve some of these questions or problems that eclipse season may have brought to the surface for you. So my mantra for this moon is, if I open my eyes and mind to see, there is a kaleidoscope of options for me. So I hope you found this beneficial. I am wishing you a beautiful new moon in Gemini. And with this fast moving energy, I am wishing you a bit of patience, as I do see things kind of falling into place a couple days after this, as we have Mercury stationing direct. So thank you so much for being here. If you like this video, please do give it a like and share with anyone who you feel may benefit from this information. If you have not yet done so, please subscribe to my channel so you receive my videos in your library when they do come in. If you'd like to book a reading with me, you can get in touch with me through my website, www.sundanceastrology.com. You can book a reading there. I also have a tip jar if you'd like to support my astrological efforts in that way. That is at the bottom of my homepage. I also have an Instagram and TikTok, Sundance Astrology. I'm fairly active on Instagram, posting a lot of the transits and energy updates that are occurring in between the moons. So if you're not yet following me there, please give me a follow. And of course, add in comments in the comment box if you want to express how this new moon is coming in for you, or maybe just how you've been feeling after the eclipses. I love to connect with you in that way. So thank you so much for being here, and I wish you a beautiful new moon in Gemini, and I will see you here for the next one.